What happens when a rule designed to keep order ends up stealing the joy of childhood? For the families of Willow Creek, it all started with a simple game of chalk art and turned into a nationwide debate about freedom, family, and fun. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon in Willow Creek, the kind of day that seemed made for laughter and play. 6-year-old Mia Rodriguez sat cross-legged on her driveway, her tiny hands clutching a piece of colorful sidewalk chalk. Around her, vibrant drawings of flowers, rainbows, and stick-figure families sprawled across the pavement, a masterpiece born from imagination and innocence. Her mom, Elena, watched from the porch, sipping iced tea and smiling as Mia giggled while tracing a hopscotch grid. It was one of those rare moments of peace. No screens, no schedules, just a child lost in the magic of creating something with her own 2 hands. But that peace was shattered when a black sedan pulled up to the curb outside their house. Out stepped Mr. Harold Jenkins, the president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, a man infamous for his strict adherence to rules and regulations. Clutching a clipboard, he marched toward Elena with an air of authority. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Rodriguez," he said curtly, adjusting his glasses. "I'm afraid I need to inform you that your daughter's activities violate Article 6, Section 4 of the HOA guidelines. Specifically, the clause regarding prohibited recreational use of driveways. All such activities must cease immediately." Elena blinked, momentarily stunned. "Are you serious? She's just drawing with chalk. How is that a problem?" Mr. Jenkins sighed, flipping through the pages of his clipboard. "Be that as it may, the rules exist to maintain safety and aesthetic consistency throughout the neighborhood. If these activities aren't stopped within 24 hours, we'll have no choice but to issue fines." Elena felt her stomach tighten. She glanced at Mia, who was now hopping enthusiastically along the hopscotch grid, completely unaware of the storm brewing around her. How could anyone see this as a violation? Wasn't playtime part of being a kid? "I'm sorry, but I can't do that," Elena replied firmly. "This is her driveway, her space to be creative and have fun. Surely, there's some way we can find common ground." Mr. Jenkins shook his head. "Rules are rules, Mrs. Rodriguez. I suggest you reconsider before things escalate further." As he walked back to his car, Elena clenched her fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. She understood the importance of maintaining order in the neighborhood, but this felt absurd. Why should her daughter's laughter be silenced for the sake of conformity? That evening, as she tucked Mia into bed, Elena made a decision. She wasn't going to let fear dictate her choices, not when it came to her child's happiness. This wasn't just about chalk drawings anymore. It was about standing up for what mattered. And if the HOA wanted a fight, they were going to get one. Elena knew that letting her daughter play outside wasn't just about fun, it was about preserving the essence of childhood. But as the HOA tightened its grip, she realized this fight would take more than just courage. The days following Mr. Jenkins' visit were a whirlwind of emotions for Elena. Anger, frustration, and disbelief swirled inside her as she grappled with the absurdity of the situation. How could an organization meant to protect property values dictate something as simple as children playing in their own driveways? It felt like a betrayal, not just of her family, but of the very concept of childhood itself. But Elena wasn't the type to let injustice slide. She decided to educate herself about the HOA's guidelines and local housing laws. After hours of research, she discovered that while the HOA could regulate noise levels and traffic safety, banning recreational activities outright was a gray area, especially when it came to private property like driveways. Armed with this knowledge, Elena drafted a polite but firm letter to the board, questioning the legality of their rule. "I understand the importance of maintaining neighborhood standards," she wrote. "However, prohibiting children from engaging in safe, supervised play on their own property seems excessive and unnecessary. Play is essential for a child's development, and I believe there must be room for compromise." She sent the letter off, hoping for a positive response. But deep down, she knew it was unlikely. The HOA prided itself on uniformity, and exceptions, even well-reasoned ones, were rarely granted. As the days passed, Elena noticed subtle changes in her interactions with neighbors. Some avoided eye contact when passing her house, clearly uncomfortable with the brewing conflict. Others, however, stopped by to express quiet support. One afternoon, a young father named Ryan approached Elena while Mia was drawing chalk art on the driveway again. "I think what you're doing is amazing," he said softly, glancing over his shoulder to ensure no one was listening. "My son loves riding his bike in our driveway, but I've been too scared to let him because of the HOA. You're inspiring me to push back." Elena smiled, touched by the comment. For the first time since the confrontation with Mr. Jenkins, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she wasn't alone in this fight. Encouraged by Ryan's words, Elena decided to take her campaign to the next level. She reached out to local parenting groups and advocacy organizations, inviting them to join her in challenging the HOA's decision. Within days, photos of Mia's chalk drawings began appearing on social media platforms, accompanied by captions praising her creativity and resilience. "This is what childhood looks like," one parent wrote beneath a photo of Mia laughing as she hopped along the hopscotch grid. "Why punish kids for being kids?" The post quickly gained traction, sparking conversations about the absurdity of HOA restrictions and the importance of supporting outdoor play. Neighbors who had previously remained silent started chiming in, sharing their own frustrations with the HOA's rigid rules. "Why can't we let kids play like this?" one resident commented. "It's harmless and healthy." Another added, "If Elena gets fined, I'll let my kids play outside too. Enough is enough." Meanwhile, Mr. Jenkins grew increasingly agitated. He called an emergency meeting of the HOA board, accusing Elena of deliberately trying to undermine their authority. "We cannot allow this kind of behavior to continue," he declared. "If we let her get away with it, everyone will start thinking they can do whatever they want." The board agreed to send Elena a formal warning, reminding her of the impending fine if she didn't comply. But instead of intimidating her, the letter only strengthened her resolve. Elena realized that the HOA's resistance was rooted in fear, a fear of losing control. And she was determined to prove that change was possible. That weekend, Elena hosted a small gathering in her driveway, inviting neighbors to show their support. She handed out sidewalk chalk and encouraged others to bring their kids to draw and play. By the end of the day, several families had pledged to join her cause, vowing to challenge the HOA's outdated policies. As Elena stood among her supporters, watching children laugh and create colorful masterpieces on driveways across the street, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about Mia anymore. It was about creating a movement that celebrated freedom, family, and the power of community. But she also knew the road ahead would be difficult. The HOA wasn't going to back down easily, and the battle was far from over. Still, Elena refused to let fear dictate her choices. If anything, the growing support only fueled her determination to see this through. The gathering in Elena's driveway had been a turning point. For the first time, neighbors who had previously stayed silent began speaking out against the HOA's restrictive rules. Inspired by Elena's courage, they started letting their kids play outside, some drawing chalk art, others riding bikes or playing catch. Within days, Willow Creek looked less like a quiet suburban neighborhood and more like a vibrant playground frozen in time. But Mr. Jenkins wasn't ready to concede. He saw the growing movement as a direct threat to his authority, and he wasn't going down without a fight. Determined to squash the rebellion, he called another emergency HOA meeting, this time with a plan to escalate the situation. He proposed fining not only Elena but also any homeowner caught allowing unapproved recreational activities in their driveways. His argument? Safety and aesthetic consistency were non-negotiable, and allowing exceptions would set a dangerous precedent. The proposal sparked outrage among residents. During the meeting, several homeowners stood up to challenge Mr. Jenkins, citing studies about the benefits of outdoor play for children's physical and mental health. One resident, a pediatrician named Dr. Lisa Chen, pointed out that restricting play could lead to long-term consequences for kids, including increased rates of obesity and anxiety. Another neighbor shared a story about how her late grandmother used to watch her grandchildren play hopscotch in the driveway, a tradition she refused to abandon. Despite the backlash, Mr. Jenkins refused to budge. He argued that the HOA's primary responsibility was maintaining property values, not promoting individual hobbies or childhood joy. If we allow one person to break the rules, he warned, we'll have chaos. But Elena wasn't backing down either. She knew that winning this battle required more than just local support. It needed national attention. So, she reached out to a prominent parenting advocacy group called Play Outside Initiative, whose mission was to promote outdoor play and combat screen time addiction. The organization immediately took interest in Elena's story and agreed to amplify her cause through their extensive network. Within days, photos of Mia and other children playing in driveways began appearing on social media platforms, accompanied by hashtags like #LetKidsPlay and #FreedomForFamilies. Influencers, educators, and even celebrities weighed in, praising Elena's resilience and condemning the HOA's actions. Local news stations picked up the story, sending reporters to Willow Creek to interview Elena and her neighbors. What message are we sending if we punish families for simply letting their kids be kids? Asked parenting expert Dr. Emily Carter during a televised segment, referencing Elena's case. This isn't just about one family, it's about protecting the rights of children to experience joy and freedom. The coverage drew widespread sympathy for Elena and her cause. Parenting groups organized rallies outside the HOA office, holding signs that read, "Play over perfection," and "Save our kids' childhoods." Meanwhile, online petitions calling for reforms to HOA policies garnered hundreds of thousands of signatures, drawing support from homeowners across the country who had faced similar battles. As the pressure mounted, cracks began to form within the HOA board. Some members, realizing the tide was turning against them, started questioning whether their rigid policies were worth the backlash. Others, including Mr. Jenkins, dug in deeper, clinging to their belief in absolute control. Elena, meanwhile, continued building alliances. She partnered with legal experts specializing in property rights, drafting petitions to present to local officials and state representatives. Within weeks, thousands of signatures poured in, demanding changes to outdated HOA guidelines. But the most powerful moment came when Play Outside Initiative arranged for Elena to appear on a popular morning talk show. Sitting across from the host, Elena recounted her journey, from the day Mia started drawing chalk art to the ongoing battle with the HOA. Her calm demeanor and heartfelt words resonated deeply with viewers, many of whom shared their own stories of fighting for their kids' right to play. By the end of the segment, the #LetKidsPlayOutside was trending globally, sparking conversations about homeowners' rights, parenting, and the role of HOAs in regulating family life. Suddenly, Elena's struggle wasn't just about her daughter's hopscotch grid. It was part of a larger debate about freedom, childhood, and community. Still, Elena knew the fight wasn't over yet. The HOA hadn't officially backed down, and there were still fines looming over her head. But for the first time, she felt hopeful. With national attention, growing support, and a strategic plan in place, she believed they could win this battle and inspire others to do the same. What happens when an entire community rises up against outdated rules? For Willow Creek, it meant a showdown between conformity and childhood joy, a battle that would redefine their neighborhood forever. The talk show appearance had been a watershed moment for Elena and her cause. Overnight, Willow Creek became the epicenter of a national debate about property rights, parenting, and the role of homeowners associations in regulating family life. The HOA, once seen as a benevolent overseer ensuring safety and aesthetic consistency, was now portrayed as an oppressive regime stifling individual freedom and robbing children of their right to play. But Mr. Jenkins wasn't ready to surrender just yet. In the days following the media blitz, he doubled down on his efforts to enforce the HOA's rules. Notices began appearing on doorsteps across the neighborhood, warning homeowners to stop allowing unapproved recreational activities or face escalating fines. Some residents received letters threatening legal action if they didn't comply within 24 hours. Elena saw these tactics for what they were, an act of desperation. The HOA was trying to intimidate people into submission, but she knew better than to let fear dictate her choices. Instead of backing down, she rallied her supporters, organizing a mass protest outside the HOA office. Dozens of families showed up, holding signs that read, "Play is not a crime," and "Let kids be kids." Parents pushed strollers while kids rode bikes and played catch in the parking lot, turning the demonstration into a celebration of childhood. Local news crews covered the event extensively, capturing footage of children laughing and playing while parents chanted slogans demanding reform. One reporter interviewed a young boy who proudly held up a drawing of himself playing hopscotch. "This is what happiness looks like," the boy said, grinning. "And we're standing with Mia." The protest drew national attention, with major outlets picking up the story. Politicians weighed in, praising Elena's courage and calling for statewide reviews of HOA policies. A state representative even announced plans to introduce legislation protecting families' rights to allow supervised outdoor play, regardless of HOA rules. For the first time, it felt like real change was possible, not just for Willow Creek but for communities everywhere. Meanwhile, the HOA board descended into chaos. Several members resigned, citing personal reasons or moral objections to the crackdown. Others openly criticized Mr. Jenkins, accusing him of alienating residents and damaging the neighborhood's reputation. By the end of the week, the board was fractured, with no clear leadership or direction. But Mr. Jenkins still clung to power, determined to salvage his authority. He called another emergency meeting, this time inviting local officials and media to address the controversy. Dressed in his usual suit and tie, he stood before a packed room of reporters and residents, attempting to defend the HOA's stance. "We understand that emotions are running high," he began, his tone measured but strained. "However, the rules exist to maintain safety and aesthetic consistency within our community. Allowing exceptions, even seemingly harmless ones, could set a dangerous precedent." His statement was met with boos and jeers from the crowd. One resident shouted, "Safety? Really? Over chalk drawings and bikes?" Another chimed in, "Why don't you tell us how much money you've spent suing families instead of supporting kids?" The chaos escalated until security guards had to escort several angry attendees out of the room. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that the HOA's reputation had taken a massive hit. Even longtime supporters were questioning whether the organization had gone too far. Back at home, Elena watched the live stream of the meeting with a mix of satisfaction and relief. She had started this journey alone, but now she had an entire community standing behind her. Still, she knew the fight wasn't over. The HOA hadn't officially backed down, and there were still fines looming over her head. To keep the momentum going, Elena launched a crowdfunding campaign to cover legal fees and support other families facing similar battles. Donations poured in from across the country, exceeding her goal within days. Local businesses offered discounts to participants in the Let Kids Play movement, while schools invited her to speak to students and parents about the importance of outdoor play. As the weeks passed, the transformation of Willow Creek became undeniable. More and more driveways filled with laughter, kids drawing chalk art, riding bikes, and playing games. Neighbors who had once avoided each other now exchanged stories of joy and unity. The sense of camaraderie was palpable, turning the neighborhood into a true community. But Elena remained focused on the bigger picture. With the help of advocacy groups and pro bono lawyers, she filed a formal complaint with the State Housing Authority, accusing the HOA of overreach and discrimination against families. She also drafted a proposal for revised guidelines, emphasizing flexibility and inclusivity over rigid conformity. By the time fall arrived, the HOA was forced to acknowledge the shifting tide. Under mounting pressure, they agreed to temporarily suspend enforcement of Article 6, Section 4, the clause banning unapproved recreational activities. While they framed the decision as a gesture of goodwill, it was clear to everyone that the rebellion had won. For Elena, the victory was bittersweet. On one hand, she was thrilled to see her daughter play freely without fear of fines or threats. On the other hand, she missed the simplicity of those early days when letting Mia draw chalk art had been just about fun. Still, she understood the importance of what they had accomplished. "It's not just about us anymore," she told Ryan one evening as they sat together on her porch, watching the sunset. "It's about proving that we can make a difference, if we stand together." Ryan nodded, smiling. "You've already made a difference. Look at how far we've come." In that moment, surrounded by laughter and the sound of children playing, Elena realized something profound. Change wasn't easy. It required patience, persistence, and courage. But when people came together for a common cause, anything was possible. Sometimes, the smallest acts of defiance can spark the biggest changes. For Willow Creek, Elena's fight wasn't just about chalk drawings or hopscotch grids. It was the start of a revolution that redefined childhood for an entire neighborhood. By winter, Willow Creek was unrecognizable from the cookie-cutter suburb it had once been. The monotony of manicured lawns and empty driveways had given way to a vibrant display of life and laughter. Kids played freely in their driveways and front yards, their giggles echoing through the streets. Chalk art decorated sidewalks, bikes lay scattered across lawns, and makeshift basketball hoops sprouted like wildflowers. It was as if the entire neighborhood had awakened, both literally and figuratively. For Elena, the transformation was deeply personal. Her driveway, once the center of controversy, had become a symbol of hope and resilience. She no longer feared fines or threats. Instead, she felt pride every time someone stopped to admire Mia's latest chalk masterpiece or thank her for standing up for what mattered. What had started as a simple act of letting her daughter play had grown into something far greater, a movement that celebrated freedom, family, and community. The HOA, meanwhile, underwent its own metamorphosis. Faced with overwhelming public pressure and legal scrutiny, the board voted to dissolve itself, paving the way for a new governing body elected by residents. This time, candidates ran on platforms of transparency, inclusivity, and respect for individual freedoms. Elena herself was approached to run, but she declined, preferring to focus on grassroots efforts rather than formal leadership roles. Still, she remained actively involved in shaping Willow Creek's future, working closely with the new board to draft guidelines that prioritized flexibility and collaboration over rigidity and control. One of the most significant changes came in the form of statewide legislation inspired by Elena's fight. The proposed bill, championed by the state representative who had supported her cause, sought to protect families' rights to allow supervised outdoor play, regardless of HOA rules. Dubbed the Play Outside Act, it passed unanimously, setting a precedent for communities across the country. Local news outlets hailed Elena as a hero, and invitations poured in for her to speak at conferences, schools, and parenting events. But despite the accolades, Elena stayed grounded. She knew that real change wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about empowering others to make a difference in their own lives. To that end, she launched a nonprofit organization called Kids Deserve Play, dedicated to promoting outdoor activities and challenging restrictive housing policies. Through workshops, online resources, and community outreach programs, the initiative helped countless families transform their neighborhoods into spaces where kids could thrive. As spring returned to Willow Creek, Elena hosted a neighborhood celebration to mark the one-year anniversary of her rebellion. Tables were set up along the street, laden with dishes made from homegrown ingredients and decorated with colorful balloons. Musicians performed lively songs on porches, while children ran through sprinklers and painted murals of rainbows and hopscotch grids on sidewalks. At the center of it all stood Elena, raising a glass of lemonade in a toast. "To Willow Creek," she said, her voice warm but steady. "May we always remember that joy isn't about perfection, it's about connection. And may we never forget what happens when we stand together." The crowd erupted in cheers, clinking glasses and applauding. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt alive, not with tension or conformity, but with genuine connection. Elena glanced around at the smiling faces, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. She had started this fight alone, but she hadn't finished it that way. Together, they had turned a personal battle into a movement for change. That evening, as Elena sat on her porch watching the sunset, she reflected on everything that had happened. Yes, the road had been long and difficult, but it had also been worth it. Willow Creek may never be perfect, but thanks to her courage and the community's unity, it was on the path to becoming a better, fairer place for everyone. And in that moment, surrounded by friends, family, and neighbors, Elena knew she'd made the right choice. This wasn't just her victory, it belonged to all of them.